Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. Interview with J.B. Lyon. A stellar student in high school and college, Mr. Lyon always had a knack for creative and professional writing. Those traits would come in handy as he spent most of his adult years a project manager traveling the world implementing transit technology. During this time, he never stopped writing short stories, which he kept in several notebooks for 15 years. The primary theme of those short stories culminated from a simple game he would play with his two sons to pass the time. The game centered around three different societies. Each one was trying to outmaneuver the other for control of the universe. And outmaneuver it, as always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram, and I'm here with JB. Hey, JB, is there anything else you'd like people to know about you?
Well, I'm a pretty avid, movie fan and sports buff. I do kind of MMA movie tie as a side hobby, as a sport, and just try my best to enjoy life when I'm free from writing or working.
Mm. Yes, understandable. Sometimes it's hard to get the time to do it. So big MMA, other sports, football, basketball, hockey. Or
No,
just
I love
martial
football.
arts. Football?
I
Okay. Who's
absolutely
your
love
team?
football. Philadelphia Eagles is my team.
Okay.
Been that way since I was a little kid, and just followed them all the way up, and was very happy when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So just avid follower of the Eagles. Basketball, not so much, and rarely watch hockey, even though it's very interesting a sport to watch in person, I think, more than it is on the TV.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I love it in person. I don't watch hockey on TV, but as a Bengals fan, I can appreciate any team who wins the Super Bowl. And
hey,
anyone who does not like the 49ers.
So you got Joe Burrow coming in, and hopefully some good things are coming your guys' way.
Hey, we will earn it when we get it, and I would love to win it against the 49ers. They owe us at least one. So, all right, let's get into this. So, how do you feel today? Do you feel orc or elf?
Can you say that again?
How do you feel today? Do you feel like an orc or an elf?
An orc or an elf? Okay, that's a good one. I feel like an elf today.
Very good, very good. Now, so the reason you're here, tell us a little bit about your work. What are you currently working
on? So my book series that I'm writing is called The Seventh Spark. It's a paranormal apocalyptic thriller book, fantasy novel, of course. It's a 5-book series, and it's about a parallel universe where there's 12 realms of men. And those realms, there's a plot to basically take them over and to bring about the apocalypse and revelation. And then there is obviously people that are trying to help make that happen. And then there's also people that are trying to prevent that from happening. And you see what they go through. A lot of my writing has to do with a lot of obviously spiritual, political, and social and economic topics, as I do fantasy. So I think I try my best to emulate some of the greats. George R.R. Martin is one that comes to mind. C.S. Lewis, those kinds of things that make you kind of question. Yeah. What you kind of believe in, and with George R.R. Martin, I love the way that he writes his characters because they're very believable. Even though you have this big fantasy world, they're very believable, and they deal with real issues and real political battles and so forth. So, do my best to try to emulate that and put that all together in my book series, The Seventh Spark.
So, George R.R. Martin, so you just like to kill off every character that we like? Is that the...
Not quite. No. But there'll definitely be some surprises and some twists in there. I love the way that he writes his characters. I think they're they're very believable, and they're flawed, and they seem like real people.
Yeah, it's like reading like history almost, when you like some of these like famous people from history might have turned into characters. I definitely see what you're saying there. So now you got to world building somehow. Were you world building before this sort of came about? Because it sounds like it might have been an organic getting to these stories, or so were you a world builder or an author first? How did you get to the world building fantasy part?
I think that most definitely I was a world builder first. In fact, I didn't even have any aspirations to write a book.
Mm.
As I said, this kind of came out of a game I played with my
Mhm.
kids, and we all had different species of people, or if you would say, aliens, different things,
Mhm.
and we played this game, and one would always try to outdo the other, and we would control the universe, and
Mm.
then there'd be some kind of political uprising, and then somebody else would control it. And I just started to jot down these stories, and it was just little pieces there, little pieces here, kind of building some characters, building some worlds,
Mm.
and from that, a story started to take shape.
Mm.
A real, story arc started to
Yeah.
take shape. And my wife, who's a poet and also an author,
Okay.
it was a lot of her kind of, look, you got to do something with this. You're always talking about, these different ideas that you have, and you keep writing in this notebook,
Mhm.
why don't you do something with it? And so I kind of embarked on that about 7 years ago. Okay, let me try to outline something, and it just kind of came about. So to me, it's been a big labor of love, because it came out of something that I was already interested
Mhm.
in, and so now it's just putting all the pieces together. So it's something that I really don't think I'd ever get tired of writing on, because it's something that I created. So it's just I just continued to go down that path, and before you know it, I had a couple of books written, and ready to write some more.
Yeah. No, I have to say, like, really, everyone, you need to go to JB's website. There'll be a link, like several links in the show notes, like under meet the characters and under the visual novel, because you have a visual and a traditional novel uh, coming out. I assume one without illustrations, and then one that has illustrations mixed in with the text. But there's some really cool artwork. Is there artwork you and your boys too, or
I didn't. Unfortunately, I'm not I wish I was an artist like
yeah?
that, but no. I have a business partner of mine that I work with, and he's very good.
Yes, yes, very cool.
And then, if you notice the different type of colors and the different types of styles, I
Hmm.
mean, that's just, that's a kind of, the age that we're into. Thank God for, Snapchat and all these different filters and different things of that nature. Is that I really wanted to kind of build this really immersive experience. And one
Mm,
of those things is to kind of have some very eye popping type of visuals.
yeah.
And so, to put that together, I did a couple different things. I looked at, I'm a big video game fan. Love RPG games. Looked at some of those. Looked a lot at different magazines and so forth, and I tried to put together a format and a style
Mm,
that would really kind of just bring you into the story.
mm. No, awesome. Yeah, no, the artwork is very cool. Yeah, no, I just seeing this. I've not read any of your work, but there looks like a lot of potential just looking at like the pictures. So, as a world builder, or actually as a human, when was the first time that you realized you loved world building? What kind of got you started world building itself?
I think it just became an excitement with the game I play with my sons. They were small, and I kind of, well, actually, I take that back. I've been in creative writing for a long time. I used to create little stories. When little books when I was little, maybe 7, 8 years old.
Mm,
I tell different stories about different things, and so was a big, huge, Star Wars fan. love Lord of the Rings, those kinds of things. So I always kind of had a big fantasy element to everything that I did. Was a huge fan of read your own adventure books back in the day, and I'm probably showing my age there a little bit. But,
and I know what you mean. So yes, you are.
So it was really great. Those were the kind of books that I read as a child. The traditional books didn't interest me as much, even though they were, good books. I just really liked the experience that you got from, being able to choose your own destiny and the graphics and the different, pictures and the art that you had in there. And from there, and again, I moved into video games, a very avid video game player, and it was always, I always got fascinated about worlds, things like Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, those kind of things where you get sucked into these huge, huge, expansive worlds and these experiences. And I just kind of always had a notebook with me and would just kind of jot down different stories or different ideas. And some of them I use, and some of them you never use. That's one of the things about being a creative writer, is that you write a whole lot more stuff than you actually use. But it's a process. Sometimes can be painful, but it's a labor of love that you're able to put that together. So did I initially set out to build this expansive universe? I would say absolutely. I would say no. I really didn't. It was more of, hey, I want to tell these stories, and then it just kind of grew, organically to say, okay, in order to tell the story right, I need to, have this, planet, or I needed to have this country, and I needed to create this kind of conflict, and so in order to do that, you really got to kind of map it out and say, okay, how much of an expansive unit of expanse do you really want to make? Do you want to just go down to, I kind of relate it to one of my favorite books, Stephen King's The Stand. It was a great book about good versus evil and a paranormal type of thriller. But he kept it within America. You didn't know anything else that was going on in anywhere else.
Yeah.
True, yeah. And when you're telling a story, depending on how your elements, you got to figure out, okay, how big does my universe need to be? And for him, with his genius, that was enough. For me, in order to write 5 books and then for part 1 and then part 2, I plan to have 5 more books. And then I want to build stories off of that. I needed to create a universe large enough to accommodate that. I kind of compare that to kind of Star Wars, where Star Wars is a situation of, they never tell you how many galaxies, how many star systems are out there. So they can continue to use that content, continue to create characters, and the sky's the limit for them. And I think that's really great because it opens up so many different ideas and concepts.
Most definitely. Very cool. So, and I think you probably mentioned this a moment ago, but I just kind of want to go back. There's a thing I always like to talk about. There's the I can moment. And the I can moment is the difference between people who like to world build or to write. And when they go, I can share this out, whether they do a podcast or a book or a game, whatever their medium ends up being, there's that moment where you go, I can do this. And you maybe question after you start, but what was that moment for you? Was it that moment with your wife telling you that you should just do this?
I would say no, it wasn't. So she she told me, hey, I can do this or whatever. And I was still pretty skeptical. So what I actually did is a couple of years ago, this was maybe 2016, 2017. I wrote a short story. It was maybe 100 pages or less, maybe a little bit under 100 pages. And I put that out on Amazon for, it was about maybe 6 to 8 months. And pretty much just gave it away. It was, very cheap to free. Most of them, I gave away free copies. And the only thing I wanted to do was just gauge feedback. I thought that was, before I go and spend all this time building this huge expanse, universe and all these stories and so forth, and put in all this work, were people interested in the overall arc? So I took one of the stories that I really liked, and I put it down on the paper, and I put it out there, and the responses I got back were very positive. The biggest thing was, okay, it wasn't enough character development, or it wasn't long enough. So I knew those things, right? I can't develop a character completely in 100 pages. It's not possible.
Or that's all you're doing.
Right. Yeah. And so, obviously it wasn't long enough. I get it. But the people, a lot of the people just wanted to hear more. And so that really was what motivated me to say, okay, I'm going to really take the jump, and a lot of people would say, hey, that's a failure because you didn't sell that many books or whatever. But see, that wasn't my goal. My goal was to get feedback and to understand, do I have a market out there?
Yeah. I think that's a brilliant way of doing it too, because I know so many people who want to take that leap. And one of the most common fears I've heard has been, well, I have nothing original, no one's interested in what I'm writing. And I usually find that that's probably not true. You might need to improve your delivery, but usually there's an audience out there if you look, and it's a smart way to test it out, to go, hey, can I find the people who would be interested? So that's a novel and very cool way of doing it. So now, sort of in life in general, what would you say is your biggest achievement to date?
As it comes to just book writing, just being able to finish, there's nothing greater to me, is when you're able to try to finish that book. Now, the creative process is absolutely wonderful. And if you don't like the creative process, it's going to be very hard for you to write a creative book. But, just being able to put the final touches and being able to see that, that first copy of that book release is just an awesome feeling. I'm in final edits on book 1 and book 2, which will be released in September. And, that's one of the most painstaking processes you can go through. It's very tedious. You gotta continue to reread and and edit and make sure all the grammatical things are correct. And so that's, it's such a great feeling when you feel like, okay, I'm done. I have a good version that I can actually release, and I get that first kind of, writer's copy is an awesome feeling.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So if you had one piece of advice going back in time to when you started the process of considering to actually turn your creative writing into something that you're going to share, what is the one piece of advice you wish you knew when you started?
My biggest thing is to go big and to follow what it is you truly want to do. So when I unreached that initial book, again, it was just 100 pages. It has some small graphics in it or whatever, but it wasn't really what I really wanted to do. But I was new to it. I went to a bunch of, you go to these meetings and you meet with these different groups, and they tell you all these different things about how you should write, right? And, you should never introduce a character, if he doesn't play a major role. And there's all these different, do's and don'ts and things that you get into. And the biggest thing that I kind of learned as putting that first book out, and then now writing this, the real meat of the story and everything when you put it out, is that you can't listen to all of that. And it'll drive you mad, because you'll just continue to make edit upon edit upon edit upon edit. And then in the end, you can't tell if it's your story or somebody else's.
Yeah.
And
ultimately, you got to find your own voices.
Yeah, I think my whole approach with this visual novel, it's definitely a new kind of concept. Now, it's big in some other areas, like in Japan, but it's more of a video game, and they basically just tell a story within a video game. You don't play anything, you just basically watch a story. It's a new concept in America, but it's what I wanted to do. I thought about it as, if I wanted to read a book, how would I want to read it? How am I going to stay engaged? And that's what I built, I looked at, I think, and especially when you think about men who read more for information than entertainment, they like, men are visual people. Millennials are visual people. And so I really wanted to pull that in and say, hey, man, I've got to do something different. And not be afraid to do it. If you want to tell your story, tell it. And then at least, if it bombs or whatever, like, at least you can say, hey, look, I built it the way that I wanted to build it.
Yeah. And this adds a whole new level of, I've completed a couple novel length books, and that's a chore. But this adds a whole nother level on top of that, I would imagine. Is that true? I mean, just because you're trying to get the art, it's stylized, but it has to kind of match and feel connected. So is that like a whole another level of that mixed into the novel?
It is definitely a labor of love, and you got to spend in the time because it is so different. Now it's because there is no, I think that, the thing with graphic novels, and I don't know how big of a graphic novel or a manga fan you are, with anime, they're great books, but there's a lot of interpretation you have to get from the drawing. You have to make a lot of interpretations from the drawing. With a traditional novel, it's the other way around. You get all the descriptions, and you have to make your own. You have to visualize it in your mind. And some people love that, and that's why I wanted to create a traditional novel, because I didn't want to steal that from somebody who just wants to create their own universe from my words, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
But the visual novel puts both of those together.
Yeah.
And and then gives a lot of hints to people. Okay, these are the things you should pay attention to, and so forth, to try to get them to, keep turning the page, continue to be engaged. And so, that is some labor, because you're only not having to figure out, you've got the writing down, but now you've got to figure out the styles and the formats and where to place the pictures, and, what's the appeal of it? How does it look? And it's all got to fit, so it's a lot of design, which I love design. I could be a UX UI designer in another life or something. So to me, that's I enjoy it. But so
a lot of surveys. That was where the survey idea of the novel came out of your UX experience, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I've worked with UX people. I'm not one, but I understand exactly what you're saying when you say that. Yes.
Yeah, because it's all about placement, right? Where do you place the picture? How does it, how is this going to appeal on the page? And I'm doing a lot of that. And if you don't like that, then there's probably not the right road to go. But it's something that I enjoy.
Most definitely sounds very cool. Now, tell me for a second, and maybe the answer is you didn't want to, but is there something that you could have done that would have got you to start sooner, down the sharing path, or do you feel you needed to follow the path you did to go the way you're going?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of quality over schedule. I've pushed the release date back a couple of times. If it's not right, if I don't like it, or if I don't like something, I definitely would say, my years in transportation technology as a project manager, it's kind of got me more of a, very, very perfectionist type of person.
Yeah.
And if I don't like it, if I don't, if there's anything in there that I don't like, I'm going to fix it first before I release it. And to me, that makes more sense, because okay, let's say, and here's a really good point for, or rationale behind it, because, the pandemic hit, right? And, it's terrible, obviously, and it's still going on. Now would have been the perfect time to release my book, or release it in May, or released it in April. I didn't do that because it wasn't ready. And I'd rather wait, even though I know that, now is the prime time that people are reading things, and everybody was pushing me, hey man, get it out. I'm like, no, I'm not going to get it out until I'm happy with it. And it's exactly what it is that I wanted to produce.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm on like book 5 of the Wheel of Time since this has started, so I could have knocked this one out too. So, but you're right.
It would have been great, but nobody knew the pandemic was coming, right? So.
No. I don't know how you could prepare for that. You asked me a year ago if this was even possible to happen in a modern society with healthcare system. I would have been like, it won't be bad. But yeah, no. Okay. But once again, that's a different podcast. Let's see. So I have to ask. So you refer to the game with your boys a little bit, and I got a lot into world building from tabletop role playing. Were you playing a tabletop role playing game with them, or is this a game you guys came up with together and it sort of developed over time?
It more developed over time. It was a lot of, to be honest, it was a lot of hand gestures. My sons would come up with some odd stuff and they would do these weird hand gestures. And then the hand gestures became characters.
Okay.
Oddly enough, it was like, okay, it was more to get on people's nerves, right? They'd have like this little 3-finger thing that would crawl up your back to get on your nerves, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And out of that became, okay, let's call this thing something. And we created a character out of it, and then that whole character became its own species. And and then so of course I had to run up that, so I came up with my own hand gesture, to mess around with them, and then that became a species, and that's how it kind of evolved.
It's like interactive world building with your kids. That's awesome.
Yeah, just to get on their nerves or to get a free punch in or something. It's like, oh, it wasn't me hitting you; it was this character.
Yes, it was Lucas the Light Bringer.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at that picture right now. So,
right.
And okay, so now we're going to go into the gauntlet round. So, for those of you who are listening the first time, or for JB, this is obviously his first interview with World Builder Sample, this is the round where I frustrate novelists by saying you need to answer as quickly as possible and with as few words as possible. So here we go.
Okay.
Oh, I know. What held you back from sharing your world?
I would say fear.
Your favorite type of fantasy world: an alien, Earth-like, or Earth-based?
Spiritual based.
Spiritual based. Okay. Take it your own way. That's good. What is your favorite time period for fantasy settings?
Ooh, AD.
AD, just anything AD. Very good. What is the most important habit or skill in creating a world?
Oh man, creative mind.
Okay. What tool or tools could you not work without?
Adobe Illustrator.
Okay. What is one resource?
Oh, actually, you know what? Can I change that?
You can change that.
Grammarly. I cannot live without it.
I have that sitting on my computer at this second. Praise Grammarly. I'm with you there.
I'm telling you, it is the best ever.
Yes. If you want to have a decent first draft to send off to someone else to edit, you feel better with Grammarly. What is one resource you would offer to a world builder, who's starting down the path that you took?
The internet and Google Images.
Very good. And if you ended up in a world you created, what would be the first thing that you would do?
Oh, man. Oh, that's a tough one. Go have a drink at the bar in a border town.
Very good. All right. Well, JB, I want to thank you so much for being able to show up today. Michael sends his regards. He wishes he could join us, but switching around work schedules can always be tricky, and especially when you have to work, which is good during the pandemic. So where can people go to learn more about you? There's jblion.com is your website. There'll be a link on my show notes. Anywhere else?
No, that's the best place for now. I will have a Twitter and Instagram up very soon. My books will be available for pre-order starting in July. And so I'll have those sites up by then.
Awesome.
And then the plan is to do the full release in September.
Yeah, so very good. We will definitely try and release this during your pre-launch, at least to try and help get you some of those initial sales going there for your big launch day. So, and we'll have the links hopefully for your Instagram and Twitter in the show notes as well. So if you go to gardul.com and look up this episode with JB Lyon, it will take you to all of the different places you can find him at. And remember to go right now to www.jblion.com.